This is Just Tool Basics, and today we're talking about marking knives. Hello everyone, welcome to Just Tool Basics. Today's topic is marking knives or scoring knives. And what these are is they're a woodworking tool that is designed to make an indelible mark in wood. By indelible, I mean it can't be erased or smudged or anything like that. You're not exactly scratching a line, but you're marking it with the edge of a blade. And these are both Japanese style marking blades, and I'll demonstrate why I like the design of the Japanese style marking blades. They're obviously two very different designs. This is called a Kiridashi, more accurately a Kiridashi-kogatana. And you can see that it's somewhat similar to a Japanese chisel, where it has the hardened steel edge and a softer mild steel or iron overlay. And then the back is hollowed out so that this is slightly recessed. So that way when you're flattening the back, you're only flattening that outside edge. So that makes it easier since it's the hardened steel part. And the kogatana part means that it just doesn't have a handle. As far as I understand, I don't speak Japanese, but all of the Kiridashi-kogatanas are like this. They're kind of naked. And then this arrow point or V point style marking knife, also hollowed on the back. You can see that it's slightly hollowed there, and then this is the part that's flattened. And it comes up to this double edge, like that. Now, you can see that this Kiridashi is obviously a very, very sharp point, because this is a general utility knife. It's not purely for marking. They do have dedicated marking tools in a similar design with a hollowed back and the softer metal overlay. Those are called shirabiki. I don't actually have one. They are just not as common here. The Kiridashi is like when you search on Amazon for Japanese marking knife, Kiridashi are what you're going to see. But anyway, the shirabiki have a much more oblique angle. So like this is very acute. The Kiridashi is much more oblique. Similar to if you had just extended this so that there was only a single point. It looks kind of like that. But I actually prefer this double point for most purposes, though the single edge or spear point has its place. And so let's give a quick demo. So I have just a piece of redwood. This is very soft, and I grabbed it just because it's going to be easier to see on camera. What you do is, once you have your tri-square or whatever you're using as a straight edge reference set up, you can take your marking knife, line it up so that it's flat against the straight edge, and you just draw it across. It doesn't need a huge amount of pressure. It's, you're not carving through the wood or slicing through it deeply, but you can see with the light that there's a nice little line there. It's not crazy deep. You could dig into it deeper if you wanted, but that's not the goal. The goal is just to mark it. It's a marking gauge, not a carving knife. And then similarly, the arrow tip or V-tip blade, same thing. Though this one, a little bit easier to hold in the hand. You can hold like a pencil, which is how I do it. And it can be used right or left-handed, or at least turned the other way if you were, marking something with the other reference. It's a little bit hard to do and keep everything on camera, but you can use either edge to mark like that. And again, you're just keeping the flat riding along the edge. And since that is ground flat, then that's the reference point, or the reference edge. A little piece of dust on there. And as you can see, This was their original one. This is the one I just made. It just makes a nice little line. Obviously, if you push harder, it will make a deeper cut, but a ton of pressure, as I said, isn't the goal. Now, I mentioned these are both Japanese style in that they're made with hardened steel overlaid with softer steel. A similar design is available in Western style. They tend to come with a carved handle. I find them a little bit bulky for my taste. I like the flat profile. It does make them a little fussy, like, you gotta use your fingernails to pick them up and whatever else, but it's not that difficult. There's another style that is the single blade style, though tends to not be this sharp of a point, that actually comes with two of them joined together like huge sharp tweezers, and they're called an inlay knife, and they allow you to do parallel lines. They're adjustable with a little screw, and it separates the blades, and then they can be used together to have consistent straight lines. It's not a tool that I have because I just don't work in that way, but that is an option if that's something that you need, is those parallel lines. Now, some of you may ask, why wouldn't I just use a utility knife? Because they're sharp and I can make a mark. Well, there's a reason that I don't recommend it. You can see how the bevel is there, and the bevel is also on the other side. Well, the problem with that is that to reference it against the edge, you have to hold it at a specific angle so that this little bevel is the part that's held flat. And so you have to be very consistent with that, as opposed to the whole side of the marking knife is flat. And so it's much easier to be consistent about where the edge is touching the wood. You want it to be right up against where you're marking, because that's where you're trying to mark, versus using a utility knife where if you hold it straight up and down, it's not tons, but it is held away. That the edge or the tip is held slightly away from the edge, and maybe it's only 32nd or 64th, but that stuff adds up, and there's no reason to be inaccurate when there's a tool that does the job properly that's easily available. So that's what we have for marking or scoring knives. Until next time, this is Just Tool Basics.